I did play the review copy of Hogwarts Legacy I received. Okay. I should just end the video right here, honestly. But let's keep going. This Hogwarts Legacy does not deserve to be reviewed on its own merits. Whether or not we want to admit it, I think, like, I mean, I already know where this is going, right? It's like, I already know, like, view the author of this one has. But to say that something does not deserve to be reviewed on its own merits already screams hypocrisy to me and a double standard. Okay, so but let's give it a shot, right? But that's my first impression of the title alone. This is not a good start, and this is coming from somebody who stands on the middle ground. This is not how you get your point across, by devaluing something of its own merits. For example, whether or not we want to admit it, it is impossible to talk positively about Hogwarts Legacy without harming a community of human beings. All right, see, that's this is something that you say when, instead of discussing it, you want to put it in a light where if you disagree with me, you're bad. If you agree with me, you're good, right? It's putting people a bit of like a rock and a hard place, because it's like okay, if you agree with me, you're a good person. We're friends. I like you. If you disagree with me, well, we're enemies, and you're against me in every sense of the phrase, which is not good. It's like you can't have a conversation like that way. You know what I mean? Because I would think that, like, the reason why you're trying to fight for something is because you want people to understand, and going to the extreme is not the way that you make people understand. Going to a place where you tell somebody that, like, hey, I'm not gonna explain to you why. I'm not gonna try to, you know, see your point of view and maybe question it and approach it from a logical standpoint. I'm just gonna go ahead and say, because like it's too hard to do otherwise, that if you disagree with me, you're a horrible person. And that just makes people look at you like, who the fuck are you? Like, you know what I mean? And that's not how you go about convincing people. That's just not how it's always been. Like, you look back, you know, like, I mean, with Black History Month, like February, you go back to like how protests were done by like African Americans in the civil rights movement. It's that when they went into the restaurants which didn't allow black people, what did they do? Did they cause chaos? Did they start mocking people because they believed otherwise of what they believed? They did not. Well, what did they do? They did peaceful protests, and they just sat down peacefully, regardless of like how badly they were treated in that time, because they knew their message, even without vocalizing it at that point in time in their protest, was loud enough that all it took was for people to see it, the way that they were treated. People just had to look, and then people were automatically, okay, yeah, there's something wrong with that. Obviously, no words need to be said. Simple as that. But in this case, it's like, if you're telling somebody like from the get-go that they're wrong, and if they don't agree that they're wrong and that you're right, is that they're horrible people, that's how you turn people off, right? And at the end of the day, your goal is to make people understand where you're coming from, and that's just not how you do it. So, to judge a creation, the article says, to judge a creation purely on its own merits is often lauded as a fair and positive method of review. Why should a bad game be praised just because it comes from a normally brilliant creator? Why should a good one be vilified just because the mind that inspired it is ignorant and hateful? Like, we get that's called being objective. You're looking at it for what it is. You're not looking at it from external biases that you might have, right? That's the whole point of judging something for its merit. And if something is good, we should be able to enjoy it and endorse it, even if we acknowledge the faults of its progenitor. Perhaps even more so when that creation takes steps to distance itself from those now tainted roots and offers support to the people who were wrong. An objective stance would be only fair, don't you think? I mean, you can't say an objective stance would only be fair, don't you think, and ask people that question when your title is already full of bias. So it's a bit of a conflicting statement there. It would feel nice to be fair, which what this movement is asking for, is fairness. But you can't ask for fairness and you know, take it away from something else or from somebody else. To judge Hogwarts Legacy by its merits alone, to look at the strides the developers have made to offer inclusivity and distance themselves from hatred, to acknowledge that they aren't to blame, and to just enjoy a franchise that once held such an important meaning to me. It would be easier to be fair. Believe me. Yeah, it would be easier to be fair, but it's going against what you're saying. So, you know, you would rather not be fair. I get it. to turn away from the discourse. This is, I mean, to turn away from this discourse, ignore context and consequence, and just exploring something I used to love. What a privilege to spend a few dollars and play a game in one of the most formative worlds of my childhood, choosing not to think about where that money goes. Well, here's the thing. To turn away from discourse, first of all, by saying this, you are turning away from discourse. By attacking, what's the author's name? J.K. Rowling from like what we saw from the previous video, like her tweets. I don't believe that they were hateful. She did express her love for like the trans community even, which could have been turned into discourse. Could have been a chance to talk, find a middle ground, even at the minimum, at least find a middle ground. But you kind of took that away from her by attacking her instead of like having actual discourse with an influential figure, which would have been to your advantage, but you chose not to. You chose not to take that. All right, I want to make it clear to you right now that as a transgender individual, I have no interest in that kind of fairness or objectivity when it comes to Hogwarts Legacy. Again, you can't fight for fairness and objectivity by taking it away from something else. I feel a moral imperative to oppose Hogwarts Legacy. A moral imperative. Wouldn't a moral imperative be taking an example from like the civil rights movement, for example? If you wanted to progress your movement, you don't do it by attacking people, right? Take for example, right? Like what were like the racist like statements towards like black people back then? Like, they're savages, they're like, all that stuff. So imagine if they didn't do the peaceful protests that they did, and instead they started attacking people, like whether it's verbally, whether it's like physically, like that would have set their movement back. And I feel like if you continue to attack instead of allow your message to be heard in a way that's digestible for everybody, because it's for your own advantage as well. If people understand your message and that they understand you better, if you present it in that way, it can only be a win-win. But when you attack somebody, if you give somebody who doesn't even know you an ultimatum, they're just gonna laugh at you. Like, I'm sorry, like it doesn't matter how good your message is supposed to be, but if you don't tell that message correctly, as history has proven, your message is not going to reach a lot of people. You might have like your community, which echoes like your same sentiments, but like at the same time, it's not your community that you need to convince. You need to convince people outside of your community, and you can't do that by attacking people. Hogwarts Legacy cannot and shouldn't be judged solely on its own merits. The statements have been repeated multiple times, because the end result of supporting the game financially and socially isn't simply a matter of how much you'll enjoy it or how nostalgic it might be to experience the world of Harry Potter. And for a lot of people, it is. It's as simple as that. If you purchase this game, if you praise its qualities and encourage others to support the developers or treat yourself to a guilty pleasure, I think she's misunderstanding what a guilty pleasure is supposed to be. I could be wrong. Let's look up guilty pleasure definition, right? Okay, let's pull it up here. Read it at the same time. Okay, guilty pleasure. Some things such as a movie, television program, or piece of music or game that one enjoys despite feeling that it is not generally held in high regard. What is considered a guilty pleasure? A guilty pleasure is an activity or piece of media that someone enjoys but would be embarrassed by if other people found out about it. I don't think a lot of people, or majority of people, are embarrassed to be playing Hogwarts Legacy. As much as Twitter has tried to shame people away from it, I don't think that people actually are ashamed, or people don't consider it a guilty pleasure. Like, we're gonna be streaming this game, you realize that? So this is already like this whole article is filled with inconsistencies and biases instead of trying to be objective. You are making a choice that will harm the transgender community, whether you want to admit it or not. It's like whether you want to admit it or not, right? It's basically saying like, I'm right, you're wrong, regardless of the circumstances. It just feels very like tantrumy to me, because like you could have an actual conversation, but you have this habit of cornering people where you kind of where you just tell them that it's like, if you agree with me, you're morally like upstanding citizen, right? If you disagree with me, you're a horrible human being. And again, that's not how you have discourse. If you want to have discourse, this is not how you get it. This statement might seem like quite a stretch at first glance, but for the sake of clarity, let's break it down. If you buy Hogwarts Legacy, you're doing 3 significant things. You're directly supporting the royalty checks J.K. Rowling will receive for use of the Harry Potter intellectual property. You're financially signaling to the wider market that Harry Potter IP is a profitable space, likely worth investing in with future titles. The more profit of the IP, the more money Rowling makes. First of all, this could have been one bullet point. So instead of 3, I guess it's 2. You're socially engaging with the IP and potentially broadening its audience, encouraging others to engage with it as well. This inevitably leads to more people being exposed to Rowling's hateful beliefs and potentially adopting it themselves. This could have been like this as well. This all could have been one point. Here's a truth that some people might not be welcoming with. This inevitably leads to more people being exposed to Rowling's hateful beliefs and potentially adopting it themselves. I'll be honest with you, nobody gives a fuck about J.K. Rowling when they're playing these games. If I'm playing a Harry Potter game, I'm not going on Twitter or like wherever like J.K. Rowling like posts her posts or whatever, and I'm going like, wow, I really love this game. Like, I wonder what her political views are. Like, what the... Oh my god, that's such an ignorant thing to say. It's inevitably leads. Inevitably. Like, what gamer, what people who games is actually gonna be playing a game? It's like me playing. I'm playing like League of Legends. Like, go to any League of Legends player who has been playing the game for years and ask them if like playing League of Legends has really like ignited their passion for finding out what Riot's political views are. Like, like this is okay. First of all, this could have all been one point, and it's not really a point. It's just, I feel like it's just a biased like statement, right? It's like this is forcing it. You know what I mean? You struggled. You wanted to have more than one point, and so you just said 3 things in, you know, but wrote it differently and made it 3 points. And then you wanted some more substance, so you add this to the end, which makes no sense. And I feel like is a very ignorant statement, in my opinion. GamesHub has already detailed a small sample of extensive transphobic rhetoric that Rowling spreads to her audience, as well as comfort and support she draws from royalties accrued by the use of Harry Potter IP. It is a fact that she leverages her wealth and platform to support transphobic legislation, and that hate groups use her name to muster support in transphobic. Okay, so let's see. She uses like Twitter, right? JK. Oh, let me just Google JK Rowling. Okay. She profiles Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm guessing Twitter is probably where she posts the most, right? That's where we see most of these screenshots from. Okay, so let's pull up J.K. Rowling's man defining what a woman is, what women should and shouldn't fear, what women should and shouldn't say, what rights women should be fine with giving up, and of course, what constitutes real misogyny. Get a bloody mirror, that's real misogyny looking right back. Okay, so this is more like feminist movement, right? Let's go to something more trans. Our holy surgeons. Surgeons that like was it from Ireland or something? Who was very okay. Yeah, that's Sir Nicholas Sturgeon from Ireland or whatever, right? Okay, so a little bit of like context on this one. It's I read it from an article. Might be paraphrasing here, but like she's basically something that she's basically somebody that said if you're not supporting her movement, you're a bigot, right? But we all know what that means. It's like she's a politician. Let's be real. She's pandering, right? She's just, that's just what she's doing. She's just pandering as a politician. That's what politicians do, right? And when push comes to shove, this starts to happen. Oh yeah, there you go. Delighted to announce that after a surprise visit to the real world where she reluctantly admitted a hulking great Chris doesn't become a woman by putting on a wig, or our illustrious leader has made it safely home to you're all just bigots territory. I think this says a lot about like that initial tweet that she had, and we had the discussion that we had in the previous video where we were basically saying that like, hey, she's not really like anti-trans. She even said it in that tweet. It's in the same tweet that people just chose to ignore. She loves trans people, right? She loves the trans community. She just wants some sort of structure, because like certain politicians like this are very dangerous because they just want to pander. Obviously they want the votes. They want to look good. That's what they do. right? It actually gets brought into like a real world scenario, right? And then when biologically born like women in prisons are being molested and all that by somebody who identified as trans, and there's nothing they can do because they were easily overpowered. And I'm pretty sure they can read like about articles from this as well. That's when her statement starts to make sense, right? She's not, from what I've read, right? Like, and this is like just not me just looking at like all these articles and saying and like regurgitating what they're saying. It's me actually like looking into what she has actually said over here and what her points were, and it's just the fact that it seems to me like J.K. Rowling, the author, just wants structure. She's not trying to be, or she's not like anti-trans. She just wants an actual structure so that trans women who go into these like institutions with biologically born women don't have the same urges or you know or you know what I mean, with especially with their history with like with violence, domestic violence, like rape and all that, that they don't harm these women in these institutions and wherever else that they might be able to do that, whether it's in a public bathroom or like anywhere else in the world. I think that's just what she's fighting for. Not that she doesn't want to give, not that she wants to take away their rights, but she just wants structure. If you look at it in that perspective, she's actually fighting for the LGBTQ plus community. And why might you ask she's doing that? She's doing that because she's the fact that she's putting structure and she's not allowing these certain situations like these right here, like this right here, right, to happen. Because you know what happens when things like this happens, right? The people who are actually anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ like plus community, they're the ones who are happy when these things happen. Because when these things happen, it sets back the movement and it gives the people who are actually anti that movement more of a reason to oppose that movement and set it back years. So I think by refusing to have actual structure, you're actually harming that movement. You can't just have a tantrum because you didn't get what you want. You need to find a middle ground and have discourse and have actual logical discussions if you want to have progress. Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people in that community that are working hard towards that. But the people who are having these little tantrums like this one right here, they're the ones that are actually harming that movement. And I get it, right? Let's be real. Not a lot of people are as supportive of that movement as you think they are. A lot of those people, like, I get it. Like, I don't use Twitter that much myself, but I know that people use it for clout. I know people use use it to further their following, and pandering to a major like community that has a lot of people in it is something that they do too. As much as I hate to say it, they're probably just clout chasing, right? Those tweets that we did in the previous video, where the guy we pretty much like discovered that the guy was actually a hypocrite. He was actually hating on the game, but he was actually playing another game who was actually supporting and made by people who would execute people just for being gay, right? So you kind of have to like you kind of really have to open your eyes with like these people that are pandering towards like that community, because you can only delude yourself for so long by thinking that these people are on your side. But the fact of the matter is, it's the people who want to reach that middle ground, which I feel like what J.K. Rowling is doing, that will actually help you in the long run. I think it's very detrimental to like the LGBTQ plus movement, which I personally would want to see move forward by leaps and bounds. But I feel like this pandering that's happening on Twitter so people get more clout, it's not helping it, because it's encouraging behavior that is detrimental to the movement. And the fact that it's being done by, you know, people who are just clout chasing, it's done by like politicians who are just pandering to the community so they get votes, so they get support, and then later on finding out that like, hey, being very bullheaded about this is not going to work out, like we need actual structure, and then going back on what they said before, it's only hurting your movement. Because like now you have to say that like you have this added to the equation. Now you have a politician going back on her words and looks very bad publicly for a politician who was quote unquote very pro LGBTQ plus to go back on her word and look stupid like online, on the news, everywhere, right? You don't want that. If you want the movement to move forward, you never want something like that, because it looks really bad, and you know, it gives people who are actually like anti that movement more reason to oppose that movement. Because I guarantee when this happened, right, or like when this interview, I guess this looks like an effective ban on trans prisoners who were committed, went back on her word and she's being interviewed for it. But imagine if instead of opposing it so hard on Twitter just to pander, imagine if she genuinely cared and knew that this was not the right path to take. I mean, it was the right path to take for her political career initially, because obviously at the time, because like she got a lot of support, she got a lot of like votes. Comes back to this. Whereas like, let's say that like, hey, I'm a politician, I genuinely care about the LGBTQ plus community. And there's J.K. Rowling, who is very, very, very influential figure. What if we worked together to move this movement forward? No matter how many little steps forward we could move it, let's move it forward. Instead of doing this and this happens. Buying Hogwarts Legacy gives Rowling financial support and risks broadening her audience. These actions are both harmful towards the transgender community. Economic influence is very real and growing ever more overt in the video game industry. Think of how many microtransactions we're seeing stuffed into games with no need for them. This is a whole different thing, by the way, with microtransactions. Has nothing to do with Hogwarts. How many companies attempted to make NFTs only thwarted by massive outcry and financial refusal from consumers? This is also a whole different subject. I'm not sure why it's in this article. The money you spend has an impact, obviously. Your actions have consequences, also, obviously. She found that out real quick, didn't she? You buy Hogwarts Legacy, you provide support that harms the transgender community. And again, based on what I've seen from J.K. Rowling, as somebody who is neither for or against her in the beginning, because I was, like I said, like I'm an outsider. I'm looking at this from like an objective standpoint, and I want to see both sides before saying anything. I don't think that she actually wants to harm the transgender community. All she wants is some type of structure to move that movement forward, even if it's not as many steps as that community would like to see. But at least it's moving forward. And you can work from there going forward, instead of taking it back by this, basically. I did play the review copy of Hogwarts Legacy I received. Okay. I should just end the video right here, honestly. But let's keep going. Oh boy. I did play the review copy of Hogwarts Legacy I received. Man. That just destroyed your whole argument right there. Anyway. What I found was a competently made, semi-open world action RPG with a fairly linear storyline, basic character progression with a very limited build expression or variety, and a combat model that was absolutely functional, but ultimately felt one note and grew swiftly repetitive. That's every game. Even a game as fresh as Black Desert Online when it first came out was like, wow, I'm using my keyboard to cast my skills. And then quickly people found out like, oh wait, there's only a few ways that I can use to chain my combos. In every fight, I'm using the same combo. This makes no sense. It's every game. But the fact that like, you're asking people not to purchase it, not to play it, and then you go around and tell me again that you played it yourself, like regardless of how much you justify that. Oh boy. I experienced no major bugs, but nor did I find much to make it stand out in the plethora of action RPGs available. If you choose not to buy Hogwarts Legacy, you won't be missing out on any huge gameplay innovations or a new paragon of the action RPG genre. The thing is, it's a Harry Potter game that looks to be the best combat that any Harry Potter game has ever had, period. Made in a way that no other Harry Potter game has ever been made, period. So yes, if you don't play it, you are missing out on it. But the author of this article sure won't, because he already played it. It's very clear while playing that the Harry Potter IP is the star of the show, and every gameplay decision has been made to facilitate and showcase the IP to its fullest. I remember when the Harry Potter fandom was a sanctuary for LGBT plus kids who felt isolated like outsiders. There was a beautiful idea I read once about the stairs of Hogwarts, specifically the girls' dormitory stairs that would allow girls to climb up but not boys, and vice versa. A closeted trans girl, lonely and desperately craving validation, would attempt to enter her assigned, dreaded dorm, only for the stairs to deny her because the stairs knew that her gender wasn't what the world said it was. Magic, pure and objective without bias or prejudice, knew their identity just as the child did themselves. The gendered staircase concept has a lot of problematic elements that could be unpacked, the binary nature, etc. But magic as a force of validation, beautiful, and that's good, right? I feel like that's beautiful. That's wonderful. But I'll tell you one thing that this piece of literature did not tell you, and I can guarantee you, it's the same thing that Scotland's First Minister didn't take into consideration as well, which is real world situations. There are some things that first look really good, sound really good. In a perfect world, sure, it might be. But the fact of the matter is that as many transgender people there are that are true to their word, that are true to who they really are and what they say or what they dictate that they are, there are still, much like in male and female, there are still horrible people. Nobody is an exception to that. Whether you're male, whether you're female, whether you're gay, you're lesbian, you're trans, whatever you might identify as, there are going to be horrible people that are going to join the fray. And the reason for structure, which is the same reason why female and male bathroom back in the day were separated, is because these are structures that were made for the safety of everybody. Because if you continuously just had male and female bathroom, in certain scenarios, if you put like male and female into one bathroom, for example, there will be situations where male and female would just like not be perverts, for example, and it would, in a perfect world, it would function just fine. But that's not the world we live in. And what she's trying to protect, and the reason why I said that she might very well be, in my eyes, that she may very well be pro LGBTQ plus, is because of that structure that she's looking for. It would actually protect and help your movement go forward. Because anything that goes wrong pushes you back. And if you don't understand that, then I believe that you are refusing to see what she's actually just trying to do, because you want to get what you want fast and right away. But that's not how that works. That's not how a movement works. There is a starting point, there's a whole long journey, and there's a endpoint. And we don't have the technology to teleport from point A to point B instantly. You have to go on a journey. And as much as we want, right, but all you have to do is look back into history. When you think about it nowadays, right? Think about it nowadays, it's very evident as to why Black people fought for their rights and for equality. But back then, it wasn't so clear. And so what did they do? They did all these peaceful protests, right? Because they knew that if they start to get violent, they would only be helping the people who are actually against them set their movement back. And that's why they trained themselves. You realize before they went on these peaceful protests, they had to train themselves because their instincts would yell at them to retaliate. But they knew that this was not the way to go. They knew that their message was so strong that even without saying anything, even if they have to take it slow, one step at a time, eventually they will get there. And she goes on to say, of course, that's not the truth of the Harry Potter IP. Rowling has made it very clear that a trans girl would find no validation in her world, no love or support. The more I play Hogwarts, the more I played Hogwarts. This again. And the longer I spent in the classrooms and grounds of Hogwarts, the sadder I felt at how tainted the franchise has become. That sanctuary is gone. It no longer exists for us. I feel like with what you're doing, you're making it a non-sanctuary for you more and more. And if you don't understand that, then you probably have alienated somebody in your life and you probably never realized it if you think back to it now. This is why Hogwarts make you a transphobe. Is one bad action enough to make you a bad person? After all, one bucket of sand doesn't make a beach and one tree doesn't make a forest. But if you buy this game, you're making a choice. You're choosing to support J.K. Rowling, even if it's just in a small way. And if you knowingly weigh the costs and decide that your personal enjoyment of a video game is worth supporting a trans exclusionary radical feminist, that indulging your nostalgia is more valuable than supporting the transgender community, well, one tree might not make a forest, but it sure is more than none. And this statement right here, from what I've seen from her tweets, she just wants to protect women. She just wants there to be structure so that those cases that happened in the prison where women were molested by transgender inmates would never happen again. And that's, she's not saying that like they have no right to be who they say they are or who they feel they are or who they identify as they are. She just wants to protect the women so those same cases would not happen again. That's it. Because it only works against your movement if you exchange your rights, you get your rights as you deserve, but at the same time you take away those rights from somebody else. That's not the right way to go about it. There is a way to resolve it. There's a solution for whatever problem that you're facing right now. It's just not by taking it away from somebody else and putting somebody else in harm's way. And then that's it. That's it. That's the video.
Whatever.